Hi there. Did you ever find yourself stuck on a Windows machine trying to copy files from a Unix or Linux server and you did not find a way to automate this? Be sure to hang on, I will teach you how this can be done. With PowerShell, of course. This is Mr. Automation. Go to presentation. Let's start from the top. So how to copy files between any operating system from Windows. By any operating system I mean Linux and Unix. Those are the most common ones, I think. But it will also work on network equipment, by the way. Next slide. So SSH from Windows. So we will do that with the PowerShell module called SshSH. I'll show you in a minute how that works, how you install that. Going to copy files from a Windows machine to a Linux box. And perhaps I have a crappy drawing here. I can share that. This one. Yes. So imagine you're sitting here on your admin laptop, right? Or on a laptop, doesn't matter. You are the administrator. You need to manage a bunch of servers here. Let's imagine there are 5,000 servers here, right? Use your imagination. You have like, I don't know, 2,000 Linux, 1,000 Unix, and 2,000 Windows machines, right? So imagine you're having a Windows system sitting here, and that needs files from this, from a Linux server, for instance, right, on a daily basis. Imagine you need to copy a folder structure every day from a Linux server to a Windows server, and then do some analysis, and then perhaps pass that even through to a Unix box, upload it to there, or the other way around. Doesn't matter, but I'm working in large organizations for a long time, and I've been doing this also for a long time. And sometimes Windows to Unix or Linux can be a little bit challenging, you know, getting files there or putting files there, uploading or downloading basically. And you have some graphical user interface tooling for that, winscp for instance, and I think there's a couple of others, but if you want to automate it, then yeah, you need to have a script or some sort in place. And yeah, I created this video to show you how that is done. So let's continue a little bit on this. We're going to copy files from Windows to Linux and to Unix, by the way. It can be automated and scheduled, very important. No need for winscp, already told that. It's a fine tool, by the way. It's nothing wrong with it, but you just can't do automated tasks with it. So in that department, it's a little bit cumbersome, right? So you have a get-scp item command that's inside of this PowerShell module, and there's a set-scp item also, that's for the upload, and the get is for the download. And there is also an SSH agent on Windows available these days, but I did not use it for this demo. Because this will also work on a 2012 server, for instance, or even a 2008 R2 server for that case. So this is a little bit more flexible, this approach. So let's go to the demo part. You know, it's boring to hear me talking and see me talking as well, by the way. So let's deploy 3 virtual machines. We need a Unix, a Linux box, and a Windows machine, right, for our test. So I have a script for that. Let's run that, and run it a couple of times today already. Let's start with the Linux box, and we call it Linux 1000, doesn't matter. I use CentOS, by the way. And I will pause this. As you can see, my cluster manager, there's no Linux. I think I have zoom it, yeah, I have that. Helps, and then see that Linux here now running, and specifically it's here, it's a virtual machine, so that's being booted currently. Let's wait for that, and that the scripts finalizes, then we have a Linux box to play with. Okay, there we have our freshly deployed Linux 1000. Let's see if I can ping that guy. Linux 1000. Okay, I can ping it, so let's set up an SSH session as well to it, so we have that available later in the demo. not provided correct password for my key. Okay. SSH mark at Linux 1000 home.local. Yes. Who am I? Hostname. Right. So I'm there, and I can even elevate myself to root if needed. So that's one. Let's clear the screen here and create a Unix box as well. Unix. Then we use not CentOS, but we use BSD, so that will be a free BSD machine, and Unix 1000. Yes, let's create that system, and I'll show you again that I'm not cheating. I don't have any Unix. You see that? No Unix systems here yet. You see nothing here yet with Unix. That's being created now in the back here with the script. It's already setting some CPUs there. So let's wait a little bit. It's actually being added to the cluster now, and here you see FreeBSD now booting, and in the background the script is configuring the system, and so we need to wait a couple of minutes and then we can use the Unix system, so we wait for that. And actually deploying these Unix and Linux systems, I'm also using the SSH module inside of PowerShell. There we have it, the Unix 1000. Let's see if we can ping the guy. Ping Unix 1000, yes. Let's set up an SSH session to that as well. So if that also available a little bit later. SSH, I don't think I have my normal account there, so I need to do it with the root for now. Yes, yes, I need to provide a password, and I'm not sure, I think it's this one. Yeah, where am I? Hostname, we're on the Unix server, and if you don't believe, see, it's a free BSD server. So we have that one in place now as well. Let's do the same for Windows, right? We need the Windows box as well. So let's create the Windows server, and we call it Windows 1000. Windows 1000. And this time we not installing, but we're installing 2019. Windows Server 2019. And let's give that some time to install. And this is the Windows server that's popping up, that's installing, and in the background you see the script still running, installing, configuring the system and such, so we can use it afterwards. And there we have our Windows 1000 also available, so let's log into that one as well. Windows 1000 this time. Let's see. And here we have a Windows server. So we deployed 3 virtual machines, and now we're going to install the PowerShell module on the Windows machine. Yes. What you do is you launch PowerShell, elevate it, so you need to run it as an administrator to install the module. You can also download the module. But it's beside the scope of this demo, I guess. So install module, push SSH. Wait a little bit. And you get a prompt, you can press yes there. You can also install module and then minus confirm false, of course. And then you suppress these kind of output messages, but for now it's fine. Then we get another prompt to install the NuGet provider, so I'll do just an all there. And now actually the module is being installed. It is installed. What I do now, I launch an ISE script editor, and perhaps for the sake of visibility, I forgot that. Let me size up the font here. Quite large one, so this is what I did. Install module, was SSH. And then I answered some questions, and now we have that module available. Basically, when we write some script now, we can use that module. Okay. So yeah, let's create a small script to download some files. That's the reason why I opened the script editor, of course. And let me copy and paste something over here, because it's quite boring to see me typing all that stuff. So let's fix this first, make it the proper size. You should be able to read that. I can even make it a little bit bigger with a nasty backtick here. Then put that on a new line. Yes, perfect. Let's save that. Okay, what we do, get SCP item that comes from that module. So if you do a get cmd, get command, get SCP, then you will see that the source is that module that we just imported. And this get SCP item, I already told you, that's for downloading files. So on this Linux box, we are going to the temp directory with some credentials, which we don't have yet, by the way. So let's construct that, and let's copy that over as well from here. Don't want to type it all over again. Basically, I can provide some credentials here and take some root credentials, because those are available on both Unix and Windows on my end. And what I can do then is, for instance, go to this Linux box, and we go to the temp directory there, yeah, right? Checking the temp directory. We can look inside of that. There's not much, but we can, for instance, create a file, mark.txt, for instance. We can even open that file, right? Nano mark.txt, and we write some rubbish in there, and we save it. Mark.txt, right? So we have some content there as well. So we created a file there, and let's go a little bit back to this scrappy drawing. And we're sitting here on this admin laptop, right? I'm connected now to that Windows server via RDP, right? You saw me make a connection there, RDP, right? I'm sitting now on one of those Windows boxes. And from that Windows box, we're now trying to, well, let's take a different color for that. We're reaching out to this Linux box, to the temp directory specifically, and we try to get everything back from the temp directory to this Windows box to the C drive, right? In the temp folder, we're going to store it there. So that's what we're doing now. So let's go back to this guy. So the first line, credentials, I already showed you. We have some credentials now. I can comment this out. It's not needed anymore. If you want to automate it, of course, you cannot prompt for credentials each time. So I created the video that can be found there on how to securely encrypt your input for scripts, credentials, passwords, and such, so that you can use them in a secure manner, right? Encryption with certificates. And on this line 3 and 4, we're actually reaching out to that Linux system here with that get SCP item command. We're using some credentials, root credentials. We just store that. We're going to the temp directory. What we do then is destination, so that's on the Windows box, and environment temp. I will show you if we go to that folder here, Explorer, environment temp. You will see that currently there's no mark Linux folder, right? There's nothing there. The path type equals directory, path type directory. It's a directory we want to retrieve. I want to have the whole temp directory and all subdirectories there. And I already showed you what's inside of it, right? Here, that's the temp directory. Okay. Okay. Enough talking. Let's run this command and see if we get an error or not. Destination. Oh, I made a mistake here. Hang on. That's the nasty thing about backticks, right? I had a hidden space there, and then your command breaks. Doesn't matter. Now it works. If I terminate this one first, try it again. F8. Now I reached out to that Linux box here, got some files from temp, and we got it back on the Windows box. Let's see if we actually have something there. On this Windows box, environment temp, see that? We now have mark Linux. Sorry, I cannot size this up properly, so you have to do, perhaps I'm able to do it, but I think you can read it. Yes, you see, mark Linux, that's now there. So if I go inside of this folder, there's temp, right? The TMP folder we copied over, and inside of that there's some hidden stuff. You didn't see that on the terminal, but there's also the mark, right? So this is our file. Let's go back to this. Let's edit this file once more. We add another line on the from the command line, right? Doesn't matter. Save that. Go back to this Linux, to this Windows server. I'm going to rerun this command, and we are going to check this folder again, this mark file specifically. You will see now that this line also has been added. Okay, so that part works. So what we did now, let's go back to the demo. Created a small script to download files, but we only did Linux, right? Now we're going to reach out to Unix and do the same. So go back to the script editor. We need to modify the command a little bit, but I already did that in advance. It's quite lame seeing me typing all these kind of syntaxes, I guess. We have better things to do, so let's do the same here. So what we do now is we go to the Unix box. We do the same, we also go to the temp directory, and let's go to that Unix box first. And that open here, right, this Unix box. And let's go to the temp directory there. We do a listing there, there's not much, the same files actually. So let's also create a file here, mark.txt on the Unix, and we go to something inside of the file, and we do that to mark.txt. Okay, now we have something inside of that file. Okay, so we have something on that Unix box now as well. What we're simulating now, take a black pen for now. We're still sitting here on this Windows box. Now we're reaching out to this Unix server. Get the content of the temp directory there and copy that back to the Windows server in the temp directory there, right? Let's do that. We're using the same credentials here for Unix and Linux. I'm using the same root password. Not best practice, of course, but that's beside of this the side of the scope of this demo, of course. So let's run it. And let's go to the temp directory again. And now we go to the temp, and we also have a mark Unix, right? You see that mark Unix, and there you have a temp, and there also we have some files, and also one of them is mark something inside of the file. Okay. That's quite cool. Let's go to the demo. So we created some small script to download files. Okay, fair enough. Now we create a small script to upload files. So now we're going to reverse the process. So what we do now, we pick some files up here from this Windows box, and we ship it over to the Linux box, right? And we copy it over there. We do the same then for the Unix as well, right? We pick it up from the Windows box and then transfer it to the Linux and to the Unix server. Okay. Let's go back to the demo here. I also prepared that a little bit, so let me see. Yeah, this part. So let's do it in two. Because uploading needs a little bit more attention, so to speak. I'll show you why that is in a second. So let's take the Linux server first, and this one as well. What we do first, we set up an SSH session to the Linux box with the same credentials. That SSH session is from new-SSHSession ComputerName. That's also part of the module we earlier imported, right? The POSH SSH module, right? And in that you can also set up an SSH session. So we do that now. So we reach out to the Linux server, and now if you look inside of SSH session, you'll see that we have connected through to the Linux 1000. What I can do then is actually create a directory, because we're going to copy this temp directory from my Windows box over to the Linux server, but actually to a directory that doesn't exist yet. And then it doesn't work because it cannot create the output structure there. So what we do, we first create that folder remotely on that Linux server, and I'll show you that it doesn't exist now. So that's also sort of a bonus that we do some SSH as well. So I do some listing here, and there you see no mark Linux folder available. When I run this command, and that's just to make there, right? This command is just run remotely on that Linux box. And if we now go back and we do a directory listing here, you'll see that we have a folder mark Linux, which is currently empty, by the way. As you can see, total 0, so that's currently empty. But we're going to fix that. If I now go back and, for instance, we go to that server, now upload everything from Mark Linux, right? So the stuff I have now here on my Windows box. And let's create a copy of this one, for instance. We have now 2 files and we call it Mark2, right? Mark2 for now. Okay, and let's now set. So now we're going to upload that back to the Linux box. Can we do that now? And let's check the Linux box now. You see that? So now we have temp here as well. And inside of temp you have Mark and Mark2.txt. But that part works. Let's do the same for Unix. I prepared those commands as well. Works exactly the same, of course. I'll show that again. First we set up an SSH session to that server. Do that now. Then on that remote server, hang on, let me fix that. On that remote server here on line 15, we create that Unix directory, Mark Unix, inside of temp, and I'll show you that's currently not there. You see that? This is the temp directory. See that? Temp. And what we do now is create that folder. So if we now look inside of here, you will see a Mark Unix folder. Okay. And if we then run the following command, we're actually uploading everything that's in Mark Unix here locally on my Windows box. And let's create a Mark 3 here, right? Doesn't matter much, of course. Mark 3, okay. And this upload everything now to the Unix box from a Windows machine. So let's do some listing now. And you see now Mark Unix. And then we have a temp folder there, right? And inside of the temp you have Mark and Mark3.txt. Use your imagination, of course. I can now modify some files here, of course. And if we then upload that back and we check on the Unix server here, the content of Mark 3, for instance, hang on. That doesn't cooperate at the moment. Yeah, I was a little bit fighting with the terminal and the keystrokes on Linux. That works a little bit strange. And here you see something inside of the file with all these lines we just created here on this Windows box, right? All this rubbish we just put inside of this file. Once more, I add some more rubbish. I save it. We upload it once more. Then we check this file once more, and then you see there's a lot of other rubbish lines now inside of this text file. So yeah, let's see. So we create a small script to download, to upload. We can perhaps create one script based on input arguments. Let's see if we have time for that. We have a couple of minutes left, so perhaps we change the script a little bit. So we add some parameters down. No, specifically this one. Yes. Let's make it a little bit simple, not too fancy. Let's call it, this is what will be the server name. Okay, some input for this script. And let's give it a mandatory assignment, so we call it mandatory. Okay. And let's take another one. I need to close this one. And you also need to give it a type, by the way. I did not give it a type, so let's make it of type string. And this one is of type validate set, I think validate set. I think you can then provide value 1, value 2, for instance. Let's see if this works. Also typing it on the fly, that will be the, let's call it item for now. Doesn't make sense yet, but it will in a second, because for instance we call this item upload and we call this item download. Okay. Now let's also provide a mandatory flag for the local path, right? Local path. and one for the remote part. Remote and local. It must be local, of course. We need to close that one, we need to close that one, and this is not the validate set anymore. That is a string. And this is not the validate set anymore. This is also a string now. So let's also. So now we're enhancing the script a little bit. This is not supported. So now we have input server name for the script. Perhaps I'll size it up a little bit. Will take some time to see me type these kind of codes, but it's perhaps quite interesting as well to see how I build these kinds of scripts. So basically we have a server name now. So we're reaching out to a server to download or upload some information. And we specify that by item, so the item will be upload or download. So perhaps action is a little bit better than item, right? Item is a little bit like action. So the action will be an upload or a download. Then the local path, you need to specify that. You want to have the local path uploaded, or do you want the remote path to be downloaded to the local path? Yeah. It's quite complicated, but I hope that you get what I mean. What we can then do, for instance, we can do some if statements here, right? So we can do an if statement. If action equals, let's say, upload. We do some action. We just step out the code a little bit, so we do some actions there. And else, that means there's an download specified. We do something else, right? That's it for now. So what do we do? If we do an upload, we must do all this stuff, right? We already found it out. So let's cut that here and put it inside of the upload action for now. Okay? Just leave it there for now. Else, it will be get action. So then we get something, right? It will be a download. So we remove that from there and we stick that there. And basically this is all not needed for now. So let's comment it out for now and put it out of the visibility so it doesn't bother us. This credential needs to go a little bit down. It makes no sense to have it above the parameters. Okay. So actually what we're doing now, this server name, that's now a variable. You can use that here, right? So we can use the server name variable there. Credential still stays the same, creds, right? We still need to have that. You can also provide it as an input here, of course, at some point in time, but for now, that's not out of the. I already told you, here's a link on how to secure credentials. I would suggest add it to the script, if you have some interest in this code. So let's see, and what we do then is we make a dir still, but we need to do that on the remote path, right? We need to create the directory. So the remote path, we create the directory. So we do that, create a directory. And then here we set the SCP item again. We can use the hard-coded server name. We can remove that, not use it, but remove it. Credential stays the same. This can also stay the same, but actually that becomes the local path. If you don't want any hard-coded values there, it becomes the local path. And the destination there becomes the remote path. There. That's it. And basically we can do the same here. And then a get item will be that server name. We'll replace that. That will be the remote path. It will be there. And then the local path and this variable, we use that then here. We can remove all this stuff there. And I think this way we now created a quite powerful script that accepts some input when we run it. And let's show how it works, right? Let's see if it works at all. Okay, let's try. It's called demo 60 minus server name, right? We have that on top there. So let's take the Unix 1000 for now. I can do the full qualify, it's not really needed, but I do it for now. Minus action. It will be, if I do a control space now, you will see that only upload or download is allowed. So I'll do an upload here. I do an upload, or a download, I meant. Download, and then minus local path. What's a local path? In my temp here I have a mark folder. I use that now as a local path, so we provide that as a value there. Then we also have a remote path, and that's again our TMP directory remotely on that Unix box. Let's run this, and now it says a user. And which user? Yeah, that's line 10 here, the Get-Credential, right? That's prompting us now. If you don't want the prompts, I will tell it again. I have a video here on how to secure those credentials, so you can automate all these steps. And now we did not got any error. And if you now go to this mark folder, you will see temp. There we have our wonderful stuff there. So let's see if the upload works as well. Perhaps we broke the script, right? Yeah, so let's try to upload something now. So we run the same script. Action is now upload. We upload from the temp directory to the remote temp. Let's see what we get if we run this. Oh, I have the debugger enabled. Doesn't matter much, I guess. Okay, script completed. Let's see. There we have it. Mark3.txt. I'm not looking in the correct folder, hang on. I am looking in the correct folder. I was uploading, not downloading. So let's change a little bit of information in here. Let's see if we can upload that back without any debugging. See? It's still debugging. I don't understand why, but never mind. There we have it. I think I was looking in the wrong folder, by the way, so it helps indeed. So let's remove everything inside of there. Let's run our script again. Okay, now we did not have any debugging, so that's good. And let's see if this temp file, you see, that was just updated, that Mark 3. You see, something inside of the file. So that was the upload part. So now, yeah, there we have it, simple script with some input, upload, download, local path, remote path, server name, and based on that, we download or upload information. And if you automate this part, the credential part with the video I created here, then you can automate all these steps. And this is a very simple script. You see that 21 lines, so I bet you can advance it a lot. At least this is how it's done. So how you can communicate with Unix and Linux from Windows. Let's go back to the crappy drawing. So yeah, we did everything that was mentioned there. We installed it, we created a small script, we even created one script based on input arguments, yes, exactly. So that makes me come to an end, and thank you very much for watching, and perhaps see you again. Bye.